Hi, everybody. I'm Carla LaBianca, and today I am with Nureed Saeed of New Interiors. She is an interior designer who hails from South Orange, but lives on the West Coast in Berkeley, California. She does have clientele on both coasts and is very active in the home improvement industry. In a little bit, I'm going to toss this over to Nureed to tell you a little bit about herself. This is our latest Soma at Home salon series for Resource at Home. Nureed and I previously did this conversation, but we had some technical difficulties, so she is very kind to rejoin me in a follow-up conversation about her favorite topic, tile and countertops. So without further ado, Nureed, do you want to take it away and tell our viewers a little bit about you?
Hi, Carla. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm excited to try and take two on this conversation. You don't never have to ask me twice, though, to talk about tile or countertops. So this was an easy ask. So as Carla mentioned, I'm actually originally from the East Coast, and I used to live in South Orange. My client base is actually in New Jersey as well as now California. I live in the Bay Area. And in addition to my design business, I'm also the president of the Northern California chapter of the National Kitchen and Bath Association. So I spend a lot of time with tiles and bathrooms and kitchens and countertops, and I'm excited to talk about them today.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. You really are. I feel like you are the expert when it comes to tile. And, Nureed and I have had this conversation previously about how California really is such a hot and happening place for tile these days, whether it be for custom tile creations or hard to find tile. Nureed, would love to hear a little bit about how you are incorporating the special kind of tile that California is producing, both in your West Coast and East Coast projects.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the really big custom as well as stocked manufacturers that we all kind of know use resource from. A lot of them are based either here in the Bay Area or in the Los Angeles area. So Fire Clay, Heath Ceramics, Riyadh Tile, Concrete Collaborative, Clay Imports. A lot of these folks are all based out here. So it's really exciting for me as a designer because you have direct access not only to the factories and being able to kind of go and take those tours and see how these tiles are made, which is, fun for me. Wow, on a day off. Fun. So much fun. I love doing it and love dragging my kids to do it with me. So it's awesome. I think it's so great. But in addition to just the actual interest in it from like a kind of a hobbyist perspective, is just the access to being able to see what are the newest trends, what's happening, and being able to provide that to my East Coast clients. When I did live on the East Coast, I think I always just ran into the thing of what was offered was really kind of more basic or more traditional in a lot of the tile showrooms, just because that's a lot of, colonial, traditional homes, right. Tudor styles, all of that. It's really more an East Coast thing, right? So that hearkening back as opposed to kind of looking forward it's just a different perspective. Whereas out here, there's definitely a bigger mix in architecture perspectives. California Modern, obviously huge out here. Mid-century Modern, you can definitely find that more easily out here than you can on the East Coast. And then even just the perspective of what you can do to the older homes, a Craftsman or a Spanish home, you can really take those in different directions than you would maybe a colonial or a traditional style home that you find out on the East Coast, which just makes going tile shopping that much more fun out here. And I've been really fortunate. I have some really awesome vendors and awesome distribution partners who are able to figure out how to get a lot of this product out to the East Coast for me.
Gotcha. So what if, one of our viewers today lives in a Victorian, let's say, or one of the classic style type of homes that we find in South Orange or Maplewood or up and down the East Coast, rather. Is there an easy way that you think to incorporate a modern tile into those houses? Is it doable if someone really wants to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two perspectives, right? I think that there's the purist perspective of kind of wanting to keep the hard finishes more pure to what would have been in the home at the time period. And I think that that's a completely valid perspective.
I
And
mean, look behind you, right? I mean, I'm in my
exactly. No, and I know from
1894 Victorian, and
I know from our many conversations that you fit in that category, right? And then you like to funk it up a little, maybe
right.
with your furnishings or your color choices
Or
or
my
your
light
accessories.
fixtures, stuff that I can
Right.
take in and out pretty easily, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So, but the permanence of, I think, tile and countertops makes many people feel like, well, I have to be more pure to the home. That is definitely a perspective. And I think a completely valid one if that's where you're at. But I also have spent time working on Victorians and older homes in New Jersey. And for me, it's been fun to kind of blend that more eclectic to kind of create the Victorian eclectic modern look, or that, traditional eclectic modern look. Where you are mixing a little bit more with some maybe some funkier tile, or, a different kind of a countertop. And it doesn't have to be quite so to the purest end of it. So, I mean, there's space, I think, for both. And at the end, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer. I think it's just about what speaks to you and what you feel good about. I mean, you are the expert as the realtor, not me, but I personally feel like these days, if you're going to spend the money on anything, you should just love it. And that should be
100%.
The main calculation to me is, do you love it? And everything else, I think is kind of like ROIs and, oh, will the next person like it? Am I going to be bored of it in 10 years?
Yep.
I mean, the good news is that tile can be replaced, and, it's not the end of the
Countertops
world.
can be replaced. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us are living in our homes for much longer. A few years ago, the average American lived 7 years in their home. Now it's 10 years. So I agree with you. Do you love it? And if you love it, and if you can see that in your home and you have that vision, then I think you should go for it, especially if it's done well, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I do think that, I've been in enough homes, and I think buyers feel that the disconnect between old and new that hasn't been done correctly. I think that, that's one of the reasons why someone should hire you, Nureed, right? The expert who understands how to incorporate modern finishes in an antique home, but make it look like it's seamless, right? The look and the feel is seamless, and it actually goes, there's a cohesion there. It is easy to go awry. So there you go, folks. Hire an expert, hire Nureed. Okay, so moving along to another topic of conversation, I think that's really near and dear to our hearts, is the topic of sustainability and green remodeling. And I know from previous conversations, this is something that is taking a forefront in your business, specifically, I believe, with countertops. Would love to hear a little bit about that.
So, so there's all kinds of countertops out there. There's obviously there's marble, there's granite, there's quartz, which has really been the big trend over the years. And then there's quartzite there, and then there's sintered stone. Obviously, there's some of the ones kind of in between that people don't use as often, because I think mostly just because they're just people are more concerned about how do I use it? What do I use? So, the real difference between all of them is, what's man-made versus what's natural. How do you install it? How do you care for it? What's the wear and tear? What's the cost? And those are the main things about the difference between all of them. And it's really just for each person to kind of figure out what's their barometer for and tolerance for each of those categories, right? A big question that comes up is, well, what's the difference between quartz and quartzite? So the biggest difference between a quartz and a quartzite is that a quartz is a man-made material while quartzite is actually a natural stone.
Yep.
So a quartzite countertop begins as a sandstone, which under a natural process of heat and pressure is fused with sparkly quartz crystals to form the quartzite, which is similar to part of the process of a sintered stone, which is it's developed by using materials and compressed under heat and pressure. Quartz is actually a majority of resin. And so it not only is it man-made, but it's also got all of this resin in it. So what is good about it is that because of the resin, when you nick it or something happens to it, you'll notice it's easily fixable, right?
Right.
You can kind of fill that hole in with more resin. And that's why it looks, oh, it's like it never happened. It's because it was resin to begin with. But there's other components to it. The majority of quartz comes actually from overseas, primarily China. And so there's the componentry of the prices have gone up on quartz a lot, because of just the popularity of it, because of the perception that it is so indestructible, but also because of at the beginning, the cheapness of it, right? Because it was coming from China. And so there was this compressed price. Then when it got more popular, and as tariffs and taxes and shipping charges and all of those things have gone up, the price of it has gone up, which puts it not that less as compared to some of these other ones that seemed out of price point. So for example, the newest one is that really people are talking about these days is sintered stone.
Right.
And so sintered stone is basically a matrix of minerals heated, sintered, to form a solid impenetrable mass. And it results in a surface that can't be etched, it can't be scratched, it can't be burned or stained.
Wow.
And so it has quartz kind of beat in almost every category, and it's more sustainable because a lot of the manufacturers these days, not only are they using recyclable materials to make the sintered stone in the first place, but then they're also creating different ones. So Neolith and Ducton both have incredible products. They're using carbon neutral materials to create them. And like Neolith, for example, has one that is has a carbon neutral production process, and where they actually recycle 89% of the waste that they generate and 100% of the water that they use when they're making it.
So let me just understand this. Sintered stone, am I saying it right?
Mm-hmm.
It is man-made?
It is man-made.
But it's done in a sustainable way.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would happen to it if I suddenly don't want it anymore? I don't want it in my house. I want to replace it with something else. Then what happens to it? Does the manufacturer take it back?
Well, depending on the model, 90% of the weight of the Neolith slabs, for example, can be composed of raw materials. And then they have portions of them that actually, of the line, where you can actually recycle it. So so there's a whole process to do that. So it's quite fascinating how far countertops have gone. And one of the big things, again, way in the beginning with quartz even, was that people would often comment like, oh, it looks fake, it looks like fake marble, right. because of the way it's created, right? You use it's basically like creating a painting. You're using a resin and dye and putting it in a slab process to create this, so of course it looks fake, right? Then there was the whole printing process, which is what started out with sintered stones and some of these other ones. And then there was the conversation, well, that looks super fake because it's printed. One of the things that, again, a lot of these manufacturers have done is they've changed their printing process. And so Neolith, for example, their printing process is so fascinating because they literally will take a marble slab and they'll scan it in to their printing process. And so when it prints out, it doesn't look fake. It looks like a real slab because it's being mocked up off of a real slab.
And what does it look like? What is it? Does it look like marble? Does it look like quartzite?
It really depends. I'm going to actually show you some right now. So give me 1 second.
I'll pull it up. Right?
It depends on. So they have some really fascinating ones. I'm, kind of obsessed with them. And you guys are really lucky out in New Jersey because the Neolith warehouse where you can go see all of them in person is actually in New Jersey.
Nice.
not far from you guys. So I was lucky enough to get to go there the last time I was out there.
I
And
remember you saying, yeah.
and so, I mean, it's incredible. They have ones that look like wood slabs. They have ones that look like, slate. They have ones that look like marble. They have, they have ones that look like quartzite. I mean, they have some really, it's quite fascinating to see.
Wow.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm just finding
Yeah,
these photos.
that's great. That's very cool. So where in New Jersey is Monolith located?
Not that far from you. They're out, on the way to Secaucus, actually.
Okay.
So not far at all. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. We can go back to the tile trends, but and we can go back even to the countertops one by one, but I want to show you specifically a Neolith slab. This is Neolith right here.
Oh, wow. Nice waterfall.
Yeah. I mean, this is beautiful. So it's intended to look kind of like a quartzite.
Yeah.
So this one's, I think this one's stunning.
Yeah, it's got hints of gold and rust, iron.
Yeah, exactly. And this is an install I'm doing in New Jersey, actually, with this product. So I'll kind of zoom in on it. But this one,
like a marble.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this, what's also really great about this particular product is, and again, you can get one from Neolith, you can get it from Decton. There are a few other manufacturers, but what's great about all of it is that because it's a sintered stone and it's done at a certain level of heat resistance, you can put your pot directly on it, and you don't need, a trivet or a coaster or something under it. You can use it for outdoor use. So for outdoor kitchens, this is fantastic. You can use it for outdoor use. And so they do applications of this on actual homes, which wouldn't necessarily happen as much, I think, out on the East Coast, but out here, where California Modern is so big, in a lot of the new modern architecture, I'm seeing slabs being put on homes.
Like on the exterior.
On the exterior, in lieu
Wow.
of siding or stone or wood, whatever it is, people are using this in applications. Now, it might not be the entire house. I don't want to make it sound like it's an entire slab, but as accents in certain places. Accents.
Right. Like maybe at the entrance of a home or
exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
Really
so yeah, it's super cool. And then, in terms of just like kitchen technology, the big wave in kitchen technology is moving to induction, away from gas and moving towards induction. And and what's so cool about that, as it relates to these countertops, is that there's integrated induction that basically is a unit that is installed under the counter. And since it reduces heat, but it also conducts heat at the same time, you could use those installs under this kind of product. So it could look like you have no stove whatsoever, no stovetop whatsoever.
Wow.
So it'll just be, imagine this whole surface was there's an induction point on it,
do you need to work with specific appliance companies to do something like that? Or could you
they're different,
like a Miele or a Wolf or anything like that?
I don't know that Miele and Wolf are speccing out under the counter systems, but there are other ones, a few out of Europe and a few that are actually serviced out here. Cooking King is one of them. And then there's another one where it's about gas. And this is something that I've been looking into for some of my clients, is to do, for example, do a 2-part induction under the surface, and then do like a 3 or a 4 burner gas next to it with pit cooking, where it's literally installed into the countertop. So again, the unit is actually under the countertop and hidden inside the casing of the cabinetry. And on the top, you just see 3 stovetop pieces or 3, kind of like just the great
so
part. So it
cool.
looks, basically it has this really seamless look. And so you have gas and induction at the same time, which a lot of people want the option because you can't use cast iron on induction. You can,
That's,
and a lot, but
yeah.
but then people do want to have, for example, induction for quick boiling.
Yep, we have that here. We have induction and gas, just because sometimes we want to grill something or actually get a char on something. So that it's just phenomenal. I really love it. Can't speak highly enough, but that's for another show.
That's for another show.
About,
and I don't
all about induction.
Exactly. And I'm not digressing into that topic right now because I'm not trying to digress rather into that topic.
Oh, it would be very easy to, because that's another fun topic. And I think a lot of people are very curious about. So let's put a pin in that and talk about that another time.
Yeah. But the reason why I bring it up is really to bring it back to the countertops, that the sintered stone is conducive to that, right? It allows that option to come into your world. Whereas quartz, regular stone, butcher block, marble, none of those options will allow you to have those appliance options as part of your countertop surface and as your countertop or your appliance option. First of all. Second of all, if you do have, a lot of people are like, oh, I hate how I have to constantly scrub my stainless to get it clean, or I don't like when it looks dirty, which, that's again, another topic for another day, to me.
Yep.
That's just part of cooking. But if that is something where you're like, you kind of want things to look a little bit cleaner, what's great about even those gas tops on top of this type of stone is that cleanup is easy peasy. You just spray and clean. Like things do not, splatter, burns, all of it. It does not impede. It doesn't stain. It doesn't impede on this surface. So again, it covers you on a lot of different, related but off-topic categories.
And Nureed, there's no off-gassing with this. There's no odd things like you would have, for instance, with granite.
Nope.
Interesting.
No, none of it. It's,
okay.
The things to keep in mind with sintered stone are, particularly the East Coast, West Coast perspective on install, which is that on the East Coast, usually what we're used to is a 3 centimeter slab, whether it's in marble, stone, quartz, quartzite, granite, and we put it directly on top of the cabinetry with no plywood underneath.
Yep.
That is usually the way things are installed there. And then it's sealed on top of the cabinets using a resin around the edges. The thing that's nice about it is that makes it easy to replace it later, right? If you ever wanted to or needed to. That is not actually how things are built and designed on the West Coast. So
interesting. You never think about that kind of difference.
Yeah. So you have 2 centimeter countertops out here, which makes it thinner. And then usually what people do is they do a buildup. So this is actually what you see here on this counter here in New Jersey, is that it's a 2 centimeter slab. And then they created this buildup on the side and they join the two edges together to create that full look. And so it is, for some people, particularly on the East Coast, this is like something where they're like not used to seeing it. And so it seems odd or funny, but it is actually a more modern approach to countertop installations.
Yep.
And it makes possible the idea of sintered stone, which does not come in a 3 millimeter slab.
Gotcha.
This is actually that slab that I just mentioned to you that has really hardly a buildup, or it's like so small and it actually like kind of goes flush with really clean line countertops. So
really stunning, very elegant.
It's very elegant. And that's the main part of it. That's why I said it's a more modern, a cleaner
I definitely,
approach.
you can definitely see how it is a modern look for sure.
So that's some of the differences, and again, pros and cons or things to think about, particularly for the East Coast viewers, about how they want to kind of do things differently, maybe. But I do foresee this being the wave of the future. In terms of, as people are spending money on their kitchens and they realize that the price differential compared to the benefits, not just the day-to-day benefits of these types of products, but also then the benefits in terms of sustainability and just feeling like, okay, you know what, I'm going to spend $1,000 more on this sintered stone, but I'm going to get it, and I'll know that it was created in a way that's more beneficial. A lot of people are moving away from wanting things that are manufactured in China, A, because of supply chain issues, or B, just because of their feelings about the global economy. And in particular, like a lot of these, again, are not actually manufactured in Asia. They're manufactured in Spain.
Okay.
So there's that component of it to think about. And you know, I'm not for or against either. I don't want to sound political when I'm talking about these subjects, but these are just, it's information and it's things to think about when
it's great
you
intel.
are thinking about how to really develop and build your kitchen. And it goes back to the conversation about tile, honestly, you know, even butcher block, which is so beautiful, right? But the cost of wood has gone up so much that even this starts becoming, it's still not at the same price point, of course, as sintered stone, but it starts etching up into other price points that, you know, I love the look of it, but it's not necessarily, you know, a lot of people used to choose it for cost.
Yes.
And it's not quite there anymore because of where the price of wood has gone over the years. But in this,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, but this kitchen was, you know, butcher block, center, and then mixed with marble on the other side.
Yep. What is the cost, Nureed, of sintered stone, like per square foot? Do you have an idea, or does it range differently depending on what the consumer is purchasing?
Yeah, actually, it ranges depending on which stone you choose. Some of them are a little, you know, so it does range. But I can tell you that, like I said, in terms of quartz versus sintered stone on the last 2 projects that I did, that I believe that the price differential was something like maybe 15%.
Okay.
So I want to say I think, yeah, it was about 15%.
Okay. So not terrible, but certainly something, you know, to consider, especially because everything else is so expensive. So,
right. I mean, look, I think it ends up being, you know, increment, like depending on the average size of a kitchen, it ends up being somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 more to do sintered stone, if you do that math, than to do quartz on an average size kitchen. Now, that all being said, porcelain is another option, and porcelain is kind of the in-between quartz and sintered stone, price-wise, as well as care-wise. It has a lot of the same properties in terms of cleanup and heat and, you know, all of those parts of it. It's also a 2-centimeter product, so it requires a buildup. So the install is similar to sintered stone. It's a little less expensive. But I would say in terms of durability, it can be repaired should it crack or has a chip, but because it's not made of a resin, when it does get repaired,
you're gonna see it.
You see it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know I've repaired porcelain before. You can still see it. I mean, you know,
right.
You gotta be looking for it, but
I mean, I think if your style is wabi sabi, then it's you know, then that's like, it's cool, right? Like then that fits into your style or your aesthetic. But if it's going to bother you, then I would say porcelain is not something that you should go into if a chip or a scratch is going to bother you later.
Yep. Same thing with soapstone, same thing with concrete, perhaps.
Oh, absolutely. All of those. I mean, concrete is a naturally porous, as is soapstone or slate or any of these, right? They're all naturally porous materials because they come from nature. So you have to constantly seal them. But even then, you know, you're putting them on surfaces where they're getting an enormous amount of water and oil and other kinds of additives, right? That generally can discolor or change the texture of those materials. So, you know, I mean, I have slate floors actually in my kitchen, and, you know, over time, you just start to see, like, if you don't wipe the water off the floor when it splatters,
Yeah,
for example, when you're doing kitchen, you actually can start to see some of the spotting from the water on the floors if you're not cleaning it up. So those are just kind of some of the things that, again, people just have to keep in mind. And that's why I started out by saying any and all of these can be great options, but you have to really kind of determine what your appetite is for what you're willing to accept. Like, is price your biggest, denominator? Is look your biggest denominator? Is care, is it a combination? Like, I mean, anyone would say it's a combination of, but, and for some folks, honestly, the sustainability perspective is number one, and they're willing to pay to know that they've sourced a product that was responsibly made and that they're not putting something out that they can't put back in. And that's really the main thing, I think, of any sustainable conversation, is the idea of not just reduce,
reuse.
Right. Or, and even repurpose, right? That's kind of been the mantra for so many years.
Yep.
But in many instances, it's like, okay, if I'm going to take something from the earth, what can I put back in it?
Yep.
So it's a different calculation, I think. And again, I have had clients actually on the East Coast who this matters a lot to them, and so it is part of the conversation. It's most definitely part of the conversation out here on the regular.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, I think, myself included, and our viewers, we want to know what's the trend right now. And, do you see trend differences? Everybody says that everything starts in California and then it'll get to the East Coast. But we would love to know, what is 2022 showing us so far when it comes to tile?
So I'm seeing some of these are the kind of, again, this is all, I want to use the word like trend kind of a little carefully, I guess, is what I'm going to start there. That's what I'm going to say. Because I think when people think of, when we talk about it, it sounds really daunting, or it feels kind of like high fashion. So it might go in and might go out.
Hard to make a commitment to a trend, right?
Right. And that, this notion that, like, okay, it's going to look terrible in 15 years because of, X, Y, Z.
That's right.
So I mean, like, tile's not even a funny one, right? Because 20 some years ago, tile was countertops, right? Like right? That was a trend. That was like more than 20 years ago. In the 50s and 60s, it was a trend, right? So, and we've all kind of unilaterally determined, like, that's not okay anymore, right? So I think it's a really interesting word, and I want to kind of think about it from a perspective of just like what I'm seeing come out like as new, and not necessarily that it's trendy or a trend, but just more, I'm using the word trend, but I'm going to use it really lightly.
Yep.
So anyway, so I'm seeing a lot of relief and 3D tiles. And what's really interesting about this is obviously that it harkens to some of like the 50s and 60s timeframe, but it's not just from there. And so it is like, again, it's a trend, but it's actually harkening back to something that used to be. But I'm also seeing a lot of it, even, for example, like, this isn't necessarily uber modern, this tile here, and it's also not necessarily traditional. It's kind of somewhere in between, and it creates this really interesting dimension into a marble surface, right? That uses a traditional or more natural material, and then kind of adds this little twist to it, which has been really interesting. Wow Design I love them. I just think that they have so many interesting patterns and offerings with their reliefs. This one is really cool because it mixes a kind of a traditional 3x12 or 4x12 subway, and then like mixes it in between with a 3D relief, a bevel.
Yeah.
And then
very cool.
This one over here is, so this is actually Edith Heath for Heath Ceramics. This one is from a building out here in the Bay Area from the 50s.
Yeah, it looks
so yes, which is super cool. And then you can see that tile is still in their line today.
Oh,
and was done in a really,
I mean, it
beautiful.
really does have such an MCM kind of feel aesthetic to it.
It does. It absolutely
Yeah.
does. But I also think like, again, I
It
think it's
works
so interesting.
today.
It works like it works
Yeah,
today. You can
absolutely.
use it and make it look a little more forward. And I think, patterns like this are interesting because you could probably figure out a way to make it look a little more transitional and not feel too modern with it.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot with 3D and reliefs. And I just think, reliefs have been part of the art world, you know,
Mhm.
for centuries. So not a
Do you
trend, but
need
just
it?
some.
What kind of installer do you need for this? Is this your average tiler, Nureed?
What you really need to think about with reliefs, and I just did one actually. I did a relief tile in San Francisco, and what you have to think about is where your cuts are going to be, and if
Yeah.
you're going to have any cuts, and that's really the main part of it. Because as compared to a completely 2D tile, where you can put any kind of cut and it really doesn't matter, you can't really cut a 3D tile. I mean, you can, but it really depends on the tile and how you cut it and where you cut it. And
Mm.
so that's really, you need a really great installer who knows how to
I mean, it
not just,
seems, yeah,
yeah, who knows not just how to install,
but
but
how to
knows
cut
how
it.
to lay, how to
And
cut
yeah,
it and how to lay it out.
yeah.
That's the main thing. And if you feel like your installer isn't quite there, then that's where people like me come in, which is what I did for this install in San Francisco, for example, is I went on site and I laid out the entire wall before they installed it. And we decided exactly what colors and where the cuts would be and how to make it work.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, you
and
have to. Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Yeah, I mean, and I think anybody would tell you that. Lay it out before, friends. Lay it out before. Um,
absolutely. I mean, that's true of
Whether
almost
it's a
any,
sheet of penny tile or hex or,
absolutely.
it might look like it's easy to put down, but you want
Absolutely.
it to look
Even
seamless.
even basic 3x6 subway tile
Yeah,
stacked, I mean, my one of my first one of my first forays into tiling myself
I know
was
this
that.
story.
Yeah. So I
I
did
know.
it. I did it in my old house
Yeah,
in New Jersey.
yeah,
And I didn't realize that when I got to the top, that's where I would end up with the cut because I started at the bottom.
that's
And what
right.
I didn't think about was that actually isn't going to quite be right. Because with all old houses, it's not level,
That's right.
right? And so you see it more when you do the cut from up there. That's not always the case. Sometimes it makes more sense to start from the bottom and go up. But in this instance, I hadn't realized till after I had done it that I really probably should have started from the top and worked my way down, because no one's really looking down. They're usually looking up.
Yep. Yeah.
And that was just with a basic 3x6 subway tile.
Yep.
So it really,
It is
it,
important to lay it out before.
laying out is the key.
Absolutely.
So, and with that said, this is another one where just the idea of geometry is art. And I just mentioned the idea of, the idea that all of this is really, to me, an art form, and it's all harkening back to art from centuries ago.
Yeah.
What I love about, the idea of tile geometry is, like, again, this is like you see so much of the idea of mosaic tiles and geometry as art dating back to kind of Islamic architecture. When you look inside of mosques and, Spanish
On the streets of
architecture,
Pompeii,
right? I mean, and you
uncovered
see
by
it coming,
archaeologists. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
see it in all different kinds of forms.
Yep.
So for me, it's really interesting, again, because I really look at each tile install as like a way to create a piece of art in someone's
Yeah,
space.
I love that. I love that.
And so this, to me, is like a huge idea, is the notion that people, I think, but prior geometry was big in the form of, everybody was kind of talking about hexagons and, putting things in a certain pattern and shape. And there's a kind of a very precise way to do it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
What I like is what's coming out now is the mixing of the shapes, or kind of turning it on its head a little bit, that it doesn't have to be, even if it is in a pattern, that it doesn't have to be quite so perfect. So I really like these different, forms, and it's coming again in different formats. Like, this is a penny tile,
I
a
love
mosaic
this.
penny tile. And I love this one
Absolutely love
too.
this.
So this is, but what I also love about this, to be really clear, is like it's being paired with a marble countertop, right?
Yep.
Done in that very clean installation. And it's also being paired with a very flat paneled cabinet, right? And so it's this idea of mixing old and new, which I love.
That.
I love the idea of mixing things together. And same here. I love it too. So this is another install. This was, artistic tile. This pattern here, this was an install I did in New Jersey. This is, again, he's ceramic, which these are all, individuals. And so what you see, again, like if you look close, it looks like it's like all these different pieces of tile, but they're actually triangles that you can put together in different forms and patterns to create the repetition.
Yep. That's what I have in my mudroom.
Yeah. And I love it. I love it. And then
it's a lot of fun.
And this one is from Tile Bar, and it's taking the hexagon and again, flipping it a little bit by
deconstructed. It's deconstructed.
It's a deconstructed hexagon. So you can see it, but you can't see it because of the way the pattern is.
Yeah, I love that.
Flipped around on its head a little bit. So I think the main thing here is that some people, I've had clients say to me, I don't like it when things are too geometric. And I think what they're responding to sometimes is the harshness or the sharpness of how it looks.
That makes sense.
And it's funny, I had the same client who said that to me, in the end, picked something that was actually a hexagon, which is geometric. But, the way it was patterned created a different kind of feel. And so she was like, oh, you know what? Never mind. I take it back. Like, this is geometric, but I actually like it. So it's a very interesting conversation about what does geometry really mean. So this is another style that I'm seeing coming out a lot, and that's
fun.
So much fun, bold color and pattern, different ways of doing it. And I love what Fire Clay did here in this kitchen, where it's kind of mixing some of their really basic squares. They're 2x2 squares. Or in this instance, probably more like a 4x4 square, but they're taking these like basic squares that they have, and you're creating pattern through color, which I love. This one here is by Juju Papers, who a lot of people know.
It looks like wallpaper.
Well, a lot of people know them for their wallpaper. That's where they started from, actually.
Exactly.
And that's where this pattern, I think, came from originally, is that they had a wallpaper. This is like their fruit salad pattern, and I just obsessed with it, but it's actually a tile. And in this instance, Carla, like you can tell from the trim of the house and the windows that this is a pretty traditional house that they've installed this in. But it's like really funky and cool. So down here, this is another one from Marble Systems, which again has kind of a little bit more of a mid-century kind of a Hollywood Regency vibe to it. But I love the black and white and the bold, but it's still clean. This one here is, I think, from Concrete Collaborative, and it's just beautiful. It's like a lovely kind of organic pattern. And this one over here is an install I did in San Francisco. So just taking a position on a color and kind of, really enjoying it. This was for a children's bathroom, so it just felt perfect.
Adorable. Yeah, that's great. And they can go into that easily too.
Yeah. And you can actually see in the mirror that's actually the
I noticed. I was going to ask you.
That's the 3D relief tile that I did in the shower of their children's bathroom.
I love it, Nureed.
So it was
I have to ask, on the Fire Clay, what is the brand of range that what is it? I mean, it's covered, but there's what is that?
Oh, I don't know.
Is that just a or is this just a spec kind of thing?
No, this is somebody's actual kitchen, and I don't remember. I actually don't remember off the top of my head.
That is so fascinating. I want
but that's actually that's actually come out. We can have that conversation when we talk about appliances, because I saw a lot of this when I was out at KBiz in February. I saw a lot of this in terms of taking your stovetop to a completely different place, and a lot of it was about integrating your stovetop so you didn't see it. And that's a big, again, that's a conversation for another time, but that's a big kitchen trend in general right now. Is either bold hardware, kind of like this,
Yep.
or almost like jewel-like hardware that looks like it's a dresser as opposed to kitchen hardware.
Yep.
And then also just, the idea that a lot of homes, people have opened up their homes. And so the idea that it looks kind of more part of the living space and less like a kitchen. So you see, integrated panels for dishwashers and refrigerators, hidden appliances, appliance garages, jeweled and wooden cabinet hardware, integrated stovetops, even the hoods, in many instances are now like covered and with the cabinetry. So it all kind of looks like it's, almost like a closet or like a walk-in space, not a kitchen so much, which is quite fascinating.
Is that a hard upkeep or easier?
I think
see
it
go in both
depends.
directions. Yeah.
I think it depends on the end user, first of all, which is what I say to everybody when they ask me these questions. It really depends on you. How do you live? How do you love? Do you want to maintain it? Do you care? How do you care to maintain it? I think all those things really depends. And then it depends on the type of cabinetry that you put in. So, what's the wood, or is it paint? Is it wood? Is it stained? There's, lots of different criteria, I think, for it. That all being said, I mean, personally, kitchens are meant to be used.
Yes. Thank you. I wrote about this in our local magazine, Matters. Kitchens are meant to be used. You're supposed to use them.
Yeah. Kitchens are meant to be used.
And jabs and dents and all that stuff. That's why you use materials that I think age with beauty and patina.
Yeah. So it really just, again, it depends on your perspective. I think if you really kind of want this perfect kitchen, that might be a slightly unattainable goal, but there are ways to mitigate some of the wear and tear, but in cabinetry, I will tell you, I don't think that that's fully the case, even just in terms of like the baseboard or whatever happens, just the regular things that happen from when you run the vacuum, or you run a corner and your kid hits it with their, shoe the wrong way. Like, things happen.
It does.
That's what touch-up paint's for.
Exactly.
To me, that's what touch-up paint's for. I'm in there with my wood wax, filling in.
Oh God, it, sister. You keep
filling
that
in the
stuff
sins.
handy.
Yeah, it's in the like junk drawer in the kitchen to fill in the sins every time my children make a sin.
And a credit card just flattens it out so nicely.
Yep, 100%. So
yep. I was actually watching on This Old House, Ask This Old House, that you get some fire to that wax and you melt it right into the crack. Sometimes it's possible to do. And then you just clean it right away with a nice straight edge, and it fills it right in. And then you can, get a little bit of paint. And I mean, there's so many ways to repair nowadays.
I mean, depending on your cabinet manufacturer and whether they're custom or not custom, but even custom people usually these days are offering touch-up kits of some kind.
Absolutely.
But most cabinet manufacturers, when you order the cabinets, they send the touch-up kit with the cabinets, right? So it has actually like the little marker and the wax that we're mentioning with the cabinetry, so that you can, care for them or fill in the things that just happen with
that
life, basically.
Happen. Yep.
That all being said, your dishwasher and your refrigerator are your two most used areas in your kitchen after your stove, probably. So if you think about it from that perspective, you do make them panel ready and it looks beautiful. Just keep in mind, those get worn the most. So what really can you live with, I think is the main thing.
And I also think, going to a manufacturer, a cabinet manufacturer that's been around for a while, I'm a big proponent of, if you've had something for 5 years and you need to replace a panel and you need to replace a door, make sure you can do it. Make sure they're going to be around so that you can replace if necessary. Yeah,
absolutely. 100%. But that all being said, and that actually, it does tie to this trend here, which is organic and natural. This actually does tie to this conversation, in that one of the big things that I'm seeing, with a lot of people are talking about Zalige tile and, all these different new techniques, clay tile. So the idea here is that it's supposed to look imperfect, right?
Yeah.
And this tile to me is really like one of my favorites, because I just love the idea that something is made to look imperfect on purpose, because it particularly again in high traffic areas,
yes.
over time,
Yes.
the grout gets a little whatever, or you get a little nick in it, something happens, there's particularly in kind of in ones like this with the clay, or not the white so much, but like ones like this, which I love love this tile so
Gorgeous.
much. It's
I love
like
that
just
color, so
makes
pretty.
my heart sing. It's even more beautiful in person, honestly. It's just so beautiful. But what I love about this is, like, if you can imagine this, behind your stovetop, for example, right? And then like something splatters on it or something messes it up, you might not even notice it, which is kind of awesome, I think, personally.
This is, this is why I chose soapstone in my kitchen. It will nick, it's soft, right? It's a soft stone. It has talc, it has a high talc composition. And as a result of that, it makes it very soft. And so it takes a nick here and there, but I just think it looks so lovely and elegant. A little bit of oil on top, take a little bit of sandpaper to flatten that out, and it looks beautiful. It looks like it's been here and it's aged. I just love that look of something that is organic and natural.
Absolutely.
That takes on a beautiful patina. I just think that's so stunning. 100%.
Totally.
Yep.
I totally agree. agree. And I mean, my main thing is that, even, and again, there are manufacturers who are doing, this is again, wow design. And I've used this tile in different applications in different colors. And what I absolutely love about it, and you can't quite see it on the screen, but you can sort of see, is that, first of all, it's not totally flat surface. It has a little bit of imperfection even within the surface, but that the box comes gradient, meaning it has shades of the color.
I see that.
And so, again, what I really love about this is twofold. The first is that oftentimes what will happen when you're buying a particularly white, but any color, is you have to make sure you get it from the same lot. Otherwise it's going to all look hodgepodge and like a mess. So sometimes when people are purchasing tile for themselves, this is something oftentimes people have come back to me and been like, I didn't know that there's different lots, or that this is going to happen. Now, what do I do?
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
And this alleviates, if you're DIYing this, whether it's through purchasing or installing, this alleviates all of that headache, is just by acknowledging up front that it will not all, it'll be shades of.
Love that.
And I loved it. I've loved it in the 2 or 3 installs I've put it in different colors. It's just been so lovely. I also just love the way it catches the light, and so it reflects other colors that are in the space off of it. So it's just, to me, this is kind of, I really feel strongly like this is where tile should go for people, because I just don't think perfection is realistic.
100% agree, my friend. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I espouse it 100%. Natural organic look is beautiful.
Yeah. And it just speaks to kind of, at the end of the day, for me, it speaks to why who I design for, right? The majority of my clients are busy and live busy lives, and they have many children
yes
and pets and lots of other hobbies. And I think that, no one has the time for perfection. It's just not part of our conversation.
Let it go.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a big Frozen song, right? So that's what we want for it. And so
absolutely.
So that's to me, that's why this is my favorite. And I saved the best for last in some ways, is, homes are for living in and loving in, and,
Yep. So true. So before we wrap up, a couple of things. What did we miss? Anything else that's good?
Sorry. Stopping share. What did we miss? I mean, those are the big things that I've seen out there, but also that I think I'm gravitating towards for the reasons that I mentioned. And I think we talked a lot about countertops. So, I think one of the questions that might come out of the audience is just like, we talked a lot about sustainability for countertops, but not necessarily for tile.
Right.
And so there's, again, two components to it, right? There's the component to it of how is it, just to do the research of how is it being produced and where is it being produced. And so again, a lot of the tile I actually showed to you were from manufacturers that are actually out here in California. So the beautiful part of that is your carbon footprint just in shipping alone is much lower by staying here in the United States on that one.
Yep. Good point.
But some of the other ones that I showed to you as well are actually like WOW is actually based again in Spain. And so they're producing in Spain and they have a warehouse. I believe it's in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's still not that far, if that makes sense. And
it does. It makes good sense.
And most of these brands that I showed you, they're making promises of ethical uses and ethical ways to do things. So there's all of that. So I think if this is important to you, do the research on how they're producing, where they're producing. It's not just about what the material is, it's also about how it's getting to you.
Got it. Okay. All right. So that's fantastic. Nureed, thank you so much. This has, as usual, been such a fun and interesting conversation. If our viewers want to get in touch with you, we know you're a member of Soma at Home. You've worked in a lot of homes in our area, but how can they get in touch with you? And of course, you can always DM me as well, because I know how to get you too.
Well, they can go to my website at www.newinteriors with an S at the end.net. You can find me on Instagram, which, Carla is my friend. So if you're friends with Carla on Instagram, you can find me too at New Interiors with an S. And either way, so you can DM me there, or you can send me a contact on the website.
School is out, Nureed.
Oh, don't I know it? I'm lucky it's 12:30 here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's probably about that time to wrap it up, but thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure all of our viewers do as well. More to come. Hopefully we're going to have a panel in the next couple of months on kitchens. And I know you're going to be participating in that, as well as some other kitchen designers around here. So looking forward to that conversation. And with that, my friend, enjoy the beautiful California weather today.
I will. Thank you. Lots of love to everyone.
Care.
Bye.
Bye.